Sure. Hello, and welcome to Making Sense of It. I'm Mona Duncan, and today we're going to be talking about the proverbial um, trapeze people. That think of Barnum and Bailey back when they were in their heydays, and they climb up way, 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 had to really crane your neck to look up and to see who was up there swinging back and forth and doing daredevil things. And so I thought we'd kind of talk about that today a little bit. That I saw a poem from George Lindbergh that kind of put me onto this. He was talking about thinking about, the people on the flying trapeze and how they seem to be so poised and know where they're going and what they're doing and all this. But yet, whenever they have to let go of one rod to catch hold of another rod, and how that can be really traumatic until you learn how to trust yourself. And I have a quote here. Here it is. Here it is. Here it is. I have a quote here from Brene Brown from from her book on guilt. Anyway, she says she's talking about her family or about people that are in the audience watching and seeing what you're doing and applauding or booing, depending upon their particular stance of how you have performed something. And so she talks about, well, what about those people that are in the stands? And she says, going back to Roosevelt's Man in the Arena speech, I learned that the person who loves me, the people I really depend on, were never those critics that were pointing at me while I stumbled. They weren't in the bleachers at all. They were with me in the arena. They were fighting for me. Nothing has transformed my life more than realizing that it is a waste of time to evaluate my worthiness by weighing the reactions of the people in the stands. The people who love me will be there regardless of the outcome and with an arm outstretched. The realization has changed everything. And she just began to realize this. Don't continually look at how do people evaluate you, as we begin to look at the fact that, how do I evaluate me? What is this? And that may seem really egotistical, but as we get honest with ourselves, it can really bring a lot of humility, realizing that I do have gifts and talents, but I also have flaws. And it's knowing that and realizing that and being okay with that. Not okay as in, you embrace your flaws or whatever, but being okay with it is the fact that in with the length of time, we can grow other into more stableness and so forth. So I have a couple questions here that I want to just ask your input on as you begin to think about it. And one is, how could you strengthen your safety net or the abilities of, being on the trapeze artist, of having a lot of things, what to do, but there's always that element of danger there. And how could you strengthen your ability to not be in those precarious situations? Any thoughts? Yes, Wendell.
Yeah, it's interesting. It hit me almost immediately, and partly, I guess, because I'm watching a lot of political news right now, and about honesty and dishonesty. And so I'm thinking one thing that I could do, hopefully doing to some extent, is try to be truthful about what I'm saying or representing. And then that minimizes maybe criticism, legitimate criticism, or even dishonesty. So, but as consistent and not wishy-washy or or two-faced or what have you. So my own honesty and interaction with other people. And of course, I don't always have to say exactly what's on my mind, but I can avoid, hurtful things, but staying true. I mean, we've all heard this. It's a wonderful phrase. The one of the beauties or the good points about telling the truth is that I never have to remember what I ever said.
Exactly.
It's just, I mean, how universal and is that a statement and how applicable too. So hanging with the truth as much as possible.
And the fact that you can give your truth from what you're seeing, your point of view, but at the same time, rather than being so dogmatic that this is all correct, being open to receiving what other people may have to say or their input for or against.
Let me throw in an example. It's tangential, but I think it's related. So
Okay.
you all know I play and teach a lot of tennis. And so you're playing tennis, and even in a social game that means not much of anything, it's not the world championship, there's not a big prize. There are some, I think my experience is happens more with some guys than women. And guys that I think overall fall into the bully category. So they hit a ball on toward my end of the court. It's really close to the line back there on the side, and I call it out. And they say, that ball was in. I mean, like that. First of all, I want to say, shut up. Do you know what the rule says? Whose call is it, yours or mine? That's what I want to say. I don't say that. But so there's boom, boom, boom. And it's my call. And I go over. And of course, one of the guidelines is that if there's any doubt in my mind at all, I give you the benefit of the doubt. Oh, I thought it was out, but maybe it caught the line. Alice, it's your point. And sometimes I'll say, well, I don't know if it was in or out, but I'm saying that it's your point. That way I don't even make the call.
Yeah.
And then conversely, if I hit one and I think it caught the line, we play on clay courts, so it's a lot easier to call. I don't say, and they say out, I don't say, that ball was in. There's Dr. Dave. Hi, Dr. Dave. I say, oh, would you check it again? I thought it might have caught the line. Not, it was in. And would you bet your life on it that it was in? Well, no. Okay, then I shall.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
well,
your question.
In continually looking at evaluating, that whether the ball is in or the ball is out or whatever, to ask ourselves on what the other person is saying, positive or negative, where is that behavior in me? Because a lot of times, whether we are either with it or whether we are against it, whenever we get honest with ourselves, we may realize, hey, this person is a mirror of me. And I'm seeing what I can be like. So where is that behavior in me? And then also to consider, what are you here to teach me? Or to yourself, what can I learn from you? What can I learn from you? And if we do that, not asking aloud, but asking to ourselves, what can I learn from you? And then realizing that between me and you, whoever you is, the person you've been arguing with or whatever, between the two of us, between the multitude of us, there is some truth that maybe none of us have found yet. And so it's to have that keen eye to be looking for it, that whenever we see something.
Let me throw in, Mona. I've said this probably a couple of times over a couple of years. My wife was a therapist, individual and group, both in drug and alcohol settings, and then in private practice. And I learned a lot from her because she's out there, was out there doing stuff all the time. I've been on the training side of counselor education, and she's been on the practitioner side. But she has a phrase, if the person's critical, it's the old thing of stopping and counting to 10, so to speak. Can I just stop for a second before I jump out and say to myself, is there any possibility that there's a modicum of truth or accuracy in what they're saying? And if I do that, there's a good chance that there may be. I mean, people say, Wendell, you talk too much. And so I say, you're absolutely right. Sometimes I do. Right. And I try to catch it, but I also feel good about my contributions if I think I've got something worth saying. But so there's a modicum of truth. I like to, I call myself a situational humorist. You have to jump on the moment. And I'm pretty good at jumping on and making a quip. And so it works 98% of the time. And 2% of the time somebody's offended. And
Yeah.
And so it doesn't always, that skill or organized behavior doesn't always work for me. Most of the time it does. But then I have the organized behavior. I've been using this term organized behavior a lot because it's right on the chart. Okay. And but then I have the organized behavior saying, hey, Roseanne, I sometimes jump out and try to make humor about things. And I think earlier I jumped out too soon and was a little bit insensitive to your situation. And I apologize to you. So that's a skill to have when it's really needed and worthwhile too. So it's nice to have. Well, you're talking about safety net, the trapeze thing, people having lots of organized behaviors to accommodate to different scenarios.
Well, I'm thinking of the time that took a couple of my grandchildren when they were young, before the others were part of our family. Anyway, we went to a butterfly farm, and there was butterflies there, and in all different stages and so forth. And my grandson asked me, but boy was just looking and looking at the pupas and all that kind of stuff. And he asked the question. He says, "Do butterflies know? I mean, do caterpillars know that they will become butterflies, or are they surprised?" And sometimes we can think we know something, but then there's a big surprise that it is more beautiful or less beautiful. And what's the transition in there that would help with the surprise? I'm sure all of you are familiar with Yogi Berra, and how he, for one thing, he had a lot of things he said that people quoted him, and yet he said, "I didn't say what they say I said." But I have a couple here, and I'd like to read them off, and I'd like you to give your interpretation of what he was saying, and how that sometimes we can miss that mark, especially if we're flying trapeze. But one of the things he said is, "I ain't in no slump. I just ain't hitting." So can you identify with that, and what does that mean to you? Is it looking at those times in our life when we just don't know what the answer is? We don't know what's next. We don't know if they'll be surprised, or if it was intended, or if they already know it. I just ain't hitting. We're not up to par where we were previously. That there's anyone comments on that?
I think it's awesome if a person can come across a challenge and then turn it into a possible success. I mean, it's a way of thinking. With that information came in, then I'm out, I'm striking out, I'm striking out, I'm striking out. What do I think? Do I think poor me? Do I think I've lost my skill? Or do I think I have the skill, I'm just not doing it yet?
Yeah.
that inner talk that we have that, and choice theory has taught me so much on that. I think that's the biggest thing is
Yeah.
that information coming in is up for me to deal with.
Yeah.
Well, look at
And
this.
so here's another quote that he said, it's kind of right behind kind of what you said. He said, keep yourself positive by not getting all negative. Is that not what you were saying?
It's exactly what I was saying, but we all have the challenges and some of them are harder than others to deal with. But eventually, if we can get our mind there to look at it, what is good in the situation? What can I get out of it? What do I need out of it? And stay on those front wheels instead of getting caught up in the back wheels.
Right. Don't go for the emotions. Go for the
Right. Right.
what's the possibility.
And you have to deal with emotions because some of them are very, very important. And you have to address them and deal with them. You just don't stay stuck in them.
Beautiful. Okay,
We've
here's another quote from Yogi.
Let me-
Did someone have? Okay, go ahead, Wendell.
We've all seen or heard this kind of an example in the sales industry, sales of any sort, insurance, cars, ideas, whatever. On the one hand, the person makes a call on a prospect and gets turned down and is dejected, and I'm a failure. I'm in the wrong business, another rejection. And over here's a guy that calls on a customer and gets turned down, and they say, well, that must be devastating. He says, no. He says, I'm one step closer to a yes. In our business, you got to make 11 cold calls to get one, whatever, so I'm one step closer to the same. So seeing it, the internal voice, as Sharon said, and self-talk and the way it's amazing the way we frame things.
Yeah. So again, let me give you Yogi
Yogi.
Berra's talk on this. He says, as long as you keep doing stuff, your luck might turn.
That goes with what Wendell just said.
Just keep doing stuff and it just might turn. Because right behind that, baseball's different today than it isn't. And could we not apply that to life? Life is different today than it isn't.
Mhm.
That can kind of take you down the thought trail, can't it? As to how it is, but yet it isn't.
Wendell, I like what you said about 11 rejections, one step closer to an acceptance. That's it's a good thing to remember
Yeah.
Yeah.
when I'm trying to
And then Alice,
what I do.
one of the wisdoms of the world is knowing, well, Kenny Rogers, you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them. And so if I got a mediocre hand in cards and I just keep betting and betting, I'm losing more, you see. Or you bluff your way through, or you fold early and take a small loss. There are all sorts of analogies to these Yogi Berra things. I'm not a fishing person, but you cut bait. They say cut bait. Know when it's going to be no longer any use, and just cut the line and let it go and go home or go to another place too. Cut your losses. And
Yeah.
but then there are other people say it may be the next try that you may be Thomas Edison, inventing something. And so it's a trade-off. How long do I keep? And one of the things we said in the early days of reality therapy, at the very end of the whole process, was don't give up, don't give up, don't give up. Well, we can not give up, but we can make smart choices to redirect and go take a breather, but not give up immediately. But
So here's
Mhm.
another wisdom of Yogi. But listen to these numbers in here. 90% of this game is half mental.
Mhm. Mhm.
Oh,
Quite a number of years ago, the book came out, The Inner Game of Tennis.
Uh-huh.
It's same purpose. You know, it's mental. You win the game mentally more as much as you do physically.
wow.
Yeah.
90%,
Yeah.
You can
On my
relate to that,
picture,
Linda. Uh-huh.
on my
90% is
picture of the
this.
car. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, 90% is this and the other half is that. Yeah, I mean, let's say I've heard that 114 times in my life. Somebody say it, and every time I laugh. It's just so funny. And I've told this one probably on this broadcast. Um, a poll recently found out that 4 out of 3 Americans were bad at math.
4 out of 3.
We're out of three.
Every time I tell it, I laugh. And every time I hear it, I laugh.
So one of my grandsons plays tennis, for the high school. And sometimes he plays doubles and sometimes he plays singles. And the singles matches he invariably wins, and the double matches he invariably loses. And he I guess in his brain he likes one-on-one competition, and the doubles is not that. It's just a different game for him. And I mean, he's still got the same abilities, but for him the mental part of it is different. So
Yeah.
it's just
He,
interesting.
he and I get together because I'm better at doubles than I am singles. Yeah. One of the
You could
things
give
that
him some advice, that's for sure.
one of the things that people don't like, don't gravitate toward doubles is doubles is always somebody else to blame,
Mhm.
or you're disappointed that they miss. If it's just singles, it's all on you.
Yeah,
And you don't have
he
to,
likes it
you don't
better.
have, you don't have to have the skills to figure out with you and your partner how we need to do differently. But
And
yeah,
Yogi says
Yogi.
the other teams could make trouble for us if they win.
Uh-huh.
um,
And another one for me says is there's no shame in trying your hardest to live up to your dream and coming short.
yeah.
So it's realizing that we are who we are.
Well, look at the setting of goals. Sometimes in the political arena, okay, we got the G7 talks, or we got this thing here. And so what people do, on the one hand, they set expectations low so that you can most likely meet those. And anything above that is, as we say, is gravy. Because if you set them up here, well, you all didn't reach your goal, did you? Well, we got part of it, so it's tricky. And yet, the higher realistically we set the goals, the more we stretch ourselves. We talked about that in the original process of reality therapy, and wobbling is great with that. The steps of a good plan, and you don't want a client or myself. Okay, yeah, I've got to make a change. I'm going to go out tomorrow and do 20 of those. Ooh, 20, how about doing 2, which is doable, but not 20. So it's again, do I stretch up here? And if reach for the stars and maybe you don't make it, but you reach the ionosphere or something.
Yeah, yeah. So there's no harm, there's no shame in doing your best at the time and coming up short. Well, thank you very much. We'll close out for today and leave with one more thought from Yogi, He says, in theory, there's no difference between theory and practice. But in practice, there is a difference.
Oh,
Mm.
Now that's deep, and we can think about that for a long time. So we're gonna stop the recording, and then we'll chat with each other.
all right.